Hey guys, so this is going to be about rhetorical analysis part 1, but I wanted to show you something first because there's something I want you to do before you watch this video. This right here is your homework for this evening. It's found in the instructions on the modules page today. Presumably you have already filled out your attendance, you have already watched the rhetorical analysis paper intro video, and now you are on this rhetorical analysis part 1 video. But I do want you to go ahead and look at this homework because I actually want you to do steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 before you finish this video. I want you to choose a speech, print it out for annotations. I want you to read through it once to try to discern the overall purpose and write that down at the top of the page. I want you to go ahead and do the rhetorical situation of your speech, which might require some minor research. You might need to get some information about the background, the occasion, the person, that kind of thing. Go ahead and type that up into a Google Doc. Then I want you to go through and annotate it again for everything that we've already learned. So your rhetorical appeals, your types of evidence, your counter arguments, things like that. Then I want you to come back to this and participate in this part, okay? All right. So once you have done these things, it is okay to go ahead and move on to this slideshow. So when it comes to rhetorical analysis, there are actually 3 steps to rhetorical analysis when it comes to writing a paper, and they spell out RAW, which makes it easy to remember. You have to read, you have to analyze, and you have to write. That sounds really basic, but I'm going to break it down a little bit more than that. So, okay, despite the fact that it's called reading, it's more than reading. This is where you identify all the rhetorical elements that the writer-speaker is using to construct their argument. So I've already had you do that for everything that we've learned so far. It was one of those things I asked you to do before you watch the video. It's part of your homework. I go like this, homework, because you're at home, so everything is homework, but you know what I mean. So I've reminded you of the things to look for today, and we're going to talk about organization a little bit today. We're going to talk about organization a lot next time, actually, as well. And then as we move on in learning new elements, you will go back and annotate for those as well. So when I say reading the text, what I really mean is reading and identifying rhetorical elements. In terms of organization, okay, another thing you want to look for today after and you can pause the video after this slide and go ahead and go back and do this now, or you can do it when the video is over. But I want you to start paying attention to the organization and the structure in which the person crafts their argument. What do they do first? Have you found their thesis? How do they transition into the next part of the speech? What do they do next? Etc., etc. And how does the author end the speech? These are things I want you to pay attention to too. So write little notes off to the side if you feel like the author is transitioning into something new. Speaker, writer, author, same difference. Write a note out to the side if you feel like you understand the purpose of a particular section. Those would be considered valid annotations as well. Okay, analyzing the text is the step that most people miss that causes their grade to flounder, okay? You can't just simply identify the elements. You have to go a step further into why the writer, speaker, author chose those particular rhetorical strategies for that particular audience, for that particular occasion, and for that particular purpose. If you don't have the analysis part, your essay will be merely a summary, which is akin in literary analysis to just plot summarizing, like a book report, okay? That's not what we're doing here. That will result in a failing grade on this paper, and we certainly don't want that. Okay, so when you're analyzing, okay, you've got all these annotations, and you're trying to figure out what they mean. Think about these 2 questions. Number 1, how does this particular strategy help the author achieve his or her purpose? And why does the author choose these strategies for this particular audience or occasion? Only once you have read and analyzed are you ready to begin putting your thoughts into a first draft. Okay? So I'm spending a short amount of time talking about this in this video, but a long amount of time is going to be put into it for you guys. All right? Now, I'm going to talk about writing an intro using just a little bit of your rhetorical situation, but we are going to talk more about this analyzing part. Don't worry. Okay, so another one of the things that I asked you to do before watching this video was to type up your rhetorical situation, and I had said there might even be a little research involved. I'm going to walk you through how to create your thesis plus your intro, and that is going to be one of the things you turn in today. So the first step is to take the speaker, the occasion, and the subject, and I've broken it down for you here in a little bit more detail here, and then I've written an example for you based on the AIDS speech that we read from Elizabeth Glazier. That's the DNC speaker. So you take the writer's credentials, which in this case would be AIDS activist and sufferer. Then you take the writer's first and last name, so Elizabeth Glazier, in his or her type of text. That would be, in this case, in her 1992 speech to the Democratic National Convention. Strong verb, and then the writer's subject. Okay, so critically evaluates, that's my strong verb, America's response to the AIDS crisis. Okay, this is the first part of creating my intro. Okay. Secondly, you're going to take purpose and audience, and this is going to turn into your thesis. Okay. Writer's last name's purpose is to strong verb, specific audience, verb phrase describing what the writer wants the audience to do or to think. Okay, now you've already come up with your main purpose, hopefully, because I asked you to do that as well and to write it at the top of your speech. So, for example, Glazier's purpose is to convince the delegates, that's strong verb and specific audience, and then here comes the verb phrase describing what the writer wants the audience to do or think, to make the allocation of resources to the AIDS epidemic a central part of the Democratic platform. Okay, and that was one of those things that we talked about as being her main claim, that we had talked about several things depending on what class period you were in and what video you watched and things like that. We talked about how she wanted to get a Democrat in office so that the AIDS research could be put in the forefront. So that this thesis focuses more on getting AIDS to be the forefront of the Democratic platform instead of so much just getting a Democrat in office, but you could have reworded it differently. So is to convince the delegates to vote a Democrat into office in order to put focus on the AIDS epidemic, that kind of thing. Okay, now, given extra time that you have in a process paper, which is what this is, meaning it's not a timed writing, you're going to go back and add a little more context at the beginning of your introduction. Okay, this is where you might need a little research, okay? So this is the stuff that actually goes first before the two sentences that we just wrote. So here's an example. In 1992, the evening news usually had at least one story that dealt with HIV and/or AIDS. The epidemic was the topic of discussion in homes, businesses, schools, hospitals, and of course, local, state, and federal government. No part of society was immune to either the rampant illness nor the wide-ranging effects. So the whole introduction would have that part in it right there. Then the first sentence that I wrote, AIDS activist and sufferer Elizabeth Glazier in her 1992 speech to the Democratic National Convention critically evaluates America's response to the AIDS crisis. And then my last one, which was the second sentence that we wrote, is my thesis. So I've highlighted in yellow. And this, when I say that I want you to create an intro and a thesis today, this is what I want you to come up with for your speech. And you'll be turning that in along with your rhetorical situation. Okay? All right. Make sure in your introduction you don't do any of the following. You don't quote anything from the speech. We're not there yet. You don't analyze anything from the speech. We're not there yet. Don't give your opinion. I don't care how fantabulous you think the speaker is or how amazing you think the speech is. Don't include it. Do not use first or second person. That's I, me, my, your, you. And do not list any elements the speaker uses to convince the audience. We're not going to do it that way. Okay? Okay. So I went over this a little bit in my other video, but I'm going to go back through it again. Some of this, like I said before, you should have done already. So first step was to choose your speech, and if you're virtual, to print it out for annotations. The second step was to read through your speech once without any annotating, just to try to come up with what you think the author's or speechwriter's overall purposes, and write it down at the top of your speech. And then what I'd like you to do is underline where you consider the author to be expressing that purpose most prominently. So, and if that's two places, that's okay as well. So in other words, what's the proof for where what you're mentioning is their purpose? How did you know that? Where does it say that, either that or something like that in the speech itself? Then you determined the rhetorical situation of your speech, which is the SOAPs, and you typed it up in a Google Doc. This is where you maybe had to do a little bit of research, okay, to get some of that background information. Then you read through it again and you annotated for the rhetorical elements that we've learned so far. Okay, now you're going to use what you just learned about crafting an introduction and a thesis to do that for your own speech. Add these to the Google Doc that you already had started, and then turn in that Google Doc. That's a daily grade. Okay, so email me with questions. This is a decent amount of work, but like I said in my other video, this paper is going to be fast and furious. Okay, we're going to get a lot of work done in class. We're going to move pretty quickly through each step of the paper, then we're going to turn it in and you're going to be done with it. Okay? All right. Let me know if you have questions. Send me an email over Canvas or over regular email if you need to. Okay? Bye, guys.